Hi, my name is Rachel Thompson. I'm a member of the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group. I'm reading one of my short stories in support of the Easton Book Festival. And what I'm going to do is read from my anthology. Previously, I've been reading from my stories from the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group's anthology. So look for those. And this is my anthology called Stalking Kilgore Trout, kind of my homage to the great writer Kurt Vonnegut. So what I'm going to do is read to you a little humorous story called The First Grade Super. Super Jake hobbled into the physical therapy waiting room and didn't get a chance to sit. Nurse Gina, clipboard in hand, came through the metal doors leading into the interior. Jake recognized her from last year's round of visits to the clinic. Jake Worthy, she said, with a broad white-toothed smile as she looked down at him. That's Super Jake, Jake replied, puffing out his pigeon chest. It wasn't easy. His 400 years of crime fighting had taken its toll. Of course, Nurse Gina said, with a pert, tight-lipped smile. Right this way, please. Like most people these days, the nurse was about 7 foot tall. She would have made a fitting adversary back in Jake's day. Now he struggled to keep up with her. Her legs pumped like well-oiled locomotives. But Jake wasn't jealous. Supers don't get jealous. He was 5'6", although he was shorter and stick-thin before Comet Blev passed the Earth, making him the world's first superhero. He never did grow much. That didn't bother him. He gained massive muscle power and amazing healing powers before anyone else. Nobody could match him back in the day. Too bad his bald on top head stayed that way, and he did require glasses. Actually, he looked rather like the accountant. Actually, he looked rather like an accountant. Coincidentally, that was his old profession. Jake still did people's books just for fun. It helped him keep his mind sharp. Large facility you guys have here, Jake commented, a little short on breath. Nurse Gina replied with a nice, kind smile. The girl was a smile machine. Was that her special power? She led Jake on a bit further. She went slower, but continued with a spring in her step. If Jake walked like that, he'd have taken off, or at least bound over a building or two, where he would have back in the day. They entered the workout room with a section of exam tables in the rear. It was like before. Every time Jake returned, it was the same routine. Gina would fill out the questionnaire, and a physical therapist would come in and read it, devise and schedule a series of therapies to help Jake with these oft-broken, always mended, tired old bones. How are you feeling today, Mr. Worthy? Gina said. Fine, 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 Jake stammered as he jumped onto the exam table that was 3 feet too high for him, just to demonstrate he had superpowers. Jake cried out on landing, however. He worried that he had broken his hip, but it was just an old injury acting up again. Gina didn't notice and went on with her questions, none too difficult. Most things were the same. She filled out the form and, with diligence, plastered on her pretty face. The girl took her job seriously, just like Jake did back in the day. I hope you've been doing your stretches, Gina said. Jake didn't do his home therapy, but he also didn't want to disappoint her. His lips quivered, which started his jaw going and teeth chattering. He just couldn't spit out the white lie that formed inside his mind. Of course, Gina, I always do my job. The more he tried, the more his teeth chattered. Gina smiled knowingly. That's okay, Gina said, handing his chart to a young girl in blue scrub uniform. He didn't know Gina's coworker. I'm sure you tried your best, Mr. Worthy. You're a good egg, Mr. Worthy. This is Sally. She's new. She'll be working with you today, okay? Gina didn't wait for an answer. She vaulted over the appointment desk in one leap and began a conversation with someone else. Jake lowered himself gently off the padded table. His new therapist was a pretty girl, and she hadn't heard his stories yet. Good. Sally was tallish, but not as tall as most. She sported a cute pixie blonde haircut, a button nose, and just enough freckles on her cheeks to play connect the dots. Super Jake decided to impress her. You know, he started, I am a superhero, you know. Back in the day, the first days, Jake's voice rose with power. Bad Bark was the one that twisted my leg around backwards. Of course, I healed, but at my age, even supers get old. It's catching up to me. Sally smiled demurely. She patted on a low work table. Jake knew to climb up and lay back. Sally grabbed a stool on wheels. Jake rolled Jake rolled his exercise suit's nylon pant leg up. She took his legs and moved it, bent his knee, feeling the movement of bone and muscle. Bad Bart got the worst of it. Yes, sir, Jake said. It was in our fifth and final battle. I swung him so hard his arms tore out of their sockets. Sally looked at him with a pained look and shuddered visibly. Oh, great. I've upset her. People don't like hearing of violence, not like back in the day. I think we'll have some mild electrical stimulation to get these nerves firing before we put you on a stationary bike, she said. Sally pulled the stim machine closer and attached suction cup electrodes onto his leg. Bart's okay now, Jake said. He's mended his evil ways. We are best friends. I even do his taxes. The arms didn't grow back, but he says he likes the robot arms just fine. Sally nodded. Maybe she did have some interest. Back in the day, it was not easy being super, Jake said. Bad guys were everywhere. Some people caught that cosmic ray just right. That changed later with the second wave. But in the beginning, every disgruntled postal worker became an evil villain. Yes, I've studied that in college, she said. The world was in turmoil back then. Quietly, Jake said, I kind of miss it. No violence. The sense of purpose. With some rubbing alcohol and a cotton ball, Sally removed the suction cup gel from Jake's leg. That should do it, Mr. Worthy. You ready for the bike? If you hooked that bike to the power station, I could power the entire town. I'm sure you could, Sally said, and slid the nerve-stimulating machine into its proper place. You know how to use the bike's timer, she said, looking at his chart. Let's do 15 minutes, okay? Jake completed the series of exercise under Sally's supervision. On the next few appointments, Jake would have a fresh ear for his stories, and that was a good deed opportunity. Exercises Jake could do on his own, he'd do like he always did before, of course. Supers did their duty. For Sally, Jake was an example of living history. He'd share more about the bad old days next time. Jake would have relished the chance to speak with his heroes back in the day. Sally's bright blue eyes and sidelong smiles pervaded as he spoke, and so Jake knew his services mattered. He mattered. He still had a positive effect, a contribution to make. After his workout, Sally asked he was feeling. Jake didn't need to lie. He filled his lungs with air, proudly announcing that he felt glorious, although he was a bit sore, and the old leg pained him. I'm so pleased, Sally said as she walked Jake to the door. She wasn't lying. He could tell. She was a girl that enjoyed her work. Jake admired her good attitude and her desire to help people. That's a super quality if ever there was one. Good job today, Mr. Worthy. I'll see you Wednesday. Indeed, Jake said. If you ever need your taxes done, I'll be happy to do them, no charge. With a good-natured pat on the back, Sally bid Jake goodbye. Jake left the clinic with without his feet touching the ground. He felt like his good old self, Super Jake, caretaker of the downtrodden, protector of the weak, in service to the people. By God, Jake made sure not to engage his super hearing as he came out of the building. Super Jake respected people's privacy. Jake felt so good, he got himself into the medical transport bus without any help. Change of point of view here. Sally leaned against the door jamb as Jake floated across the lobby. She heard Gina approach from behind. How'd it go with Jake? Gina said. Did he bore you with his bad Bart stories? No, Sally said. He was cute. I felt sorry for him. He seems lonely. A bunch of us are flying to Madrid for dinner. Care to join us? Gina asked. Sally used her X-ray vision to watch Jake hoist himself into the medical transport van. Thanks, but I can't, Sally said. My flight suit is in the cleaners. I hate flying without my cape. Gina nodded. Resist the urge to stop at the old super's home, Gina said. You can't befriend every old super that comes here. That wouldn't be professional, Sally said. But I do need help with my taxes. He's good with numbers, Gina said with a knowing smile. See you later, Sally. Oh, wait. Oh, said with a knowing smile. Jake's bus left and a new van appeared. Looks like Water Woman's here for her breathing treatment, Gina said. See you later, Sally. Water Woman was a dastardly villain once, but now she was nothing more than Mrs. Trout, a hurting old woman, a human being in need. Sally gave her the best of care, just like any other evolved human being would. Coincidentally, Sally's fish pond needed attention, and Mrs. Trout volunteered to look into it. And that's the story of Super Jake. Thank you so much for listening.